Hey everybody, welcome back to another Meaningful Monday live stream. My name is Drew B. Harlell, and I'm here to talk today about personal inflation. What does that mean? That's a term I made up, actually, but it's a concept that comes from financial inflation. So for those of you who don't know what that is, financial inflation is the fact that every year money gets less and less valuable. So the more the government prints more money, the more inflation increases. So every year, people say keeping up with inflation. If your salary stays exactly the same, you've lost money every year. Essentially, 2 to 3% is where inflation is at every year. The money gets less and less valuable by that much as year over year. And so that happens because a couple different factors. One, there's more money in circulation, right? So that as time happens, as time goes on, money gets cheaper and cheaper in terms of what the value is in the world market. And that's why things seem to cost a lot more now than it did 10 years ago or 15 years ago. They do. They cost the same essentially in overall money, but inflation makes everything seem like it costs a lot more because the money's cheaper. If you look at things, again, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when they compare cinema or any kind of earnings of some sort, they say adjusted for inflation because inflation changes the value of the money over time. The same way that you have to keep up with inflation by increasing your bank accounts, increasing your interest rates or what have you by a certain amount in order to actually at least break even by 2 or 3%, which banks don't even match anymore. The same way you want to do that with your personal life and with your personal development. A lot of times we just figure we'll just stay the same person and grow and just naturally over time. And maybe that's true. Maybe we will. But if you're not intentional about it, then you run the risk of running into personal inflation. I mean, do you know someone who does the exact same stuff that they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago? They don't really grow. They haven't grown at all. They're just exactly in the same job, same interests. They haven't really done a whole lot in terms of their personal life. They haven't done a whole lot in their professional life. They haven't really adopted anything or learned anything new. That person's the same person they were. And after a while, that can get kind of boring. I mean, they're good people out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything wrong about that person. They might be fun to hang out with. But ultimately, if you're on the path to growing yourself and building a business, you want folks who are able in your network to support you and to understand your path and understand where you're going with that. And that can get frustrating sometimes because a lot of people who stay in that trap, so to speak, of that personal inflation trap, they're less and less valuable skills wise in the marketplace. If you think about it a different way, look at the NBA or tennis, for example, right? Before certain amazing players come into it, like Pete Sampras or Roger Federer, these games are played at a certain level. And then these players come in, these amazing players, and they come and they revolutionize the game. They change the entire game. Serena Williams, for example, and Venus Williams, when they entered tennis, they revolutionized the game. And all the other players had to change and catch up and figure out how to beat them, how to try to win those games. And it took a long time for that to happen. But eventually it came back to the point where everyone else had to raise their game to get there. Now, a lot of times these athletes and folks like that are working in terms of, oh, I'm just going to stay where I'm at, that I can just operate and coast at the level I'm at right now and then figure that out. But over time, you're going to find that people are going to rise to your level as well. I mean, a nerdy example, because I'm a nerd and I have to do this, Dragon Ball Z, right? For those of you who watched it, it's an anime show, and the main character is a character named Goku. And he's a warrior, and all these people, all his friends and family and whatnot are warriors. And on this particular show, he raises his abilities to the point where he's so powerful. He's like so much more powerful than other people, all of the other friends and family. But he has to do that to face these enemies who are really, really powerful. And after a while, though, his power level that he achieved, that he worked so hard to achieve and get to the point where he's amazing, is just the same as everybody else's. And he has to keep getting higher and higher and higher to the point where it's just kind of ridiculous at certain points. And he actually achieves what they call God level powers. That's a different conversation. But the same idea applies, right? You raise the bar, and then that bar becomes the bar. Josh, thanks for sharing, man. I struggle with this. It's safe to stay in the same spot. Growing can be scary. Absolutely, man. 100%. I mean, growing involves putting yourself out there. Growing involves trying something new and possibly failing at it. Growing involves getting out of your comfort zone. That's all really scary stuff. It's all stuff that gets you out of your comfort zone, right? I mean, but the path to growth is on that comfort zone, on the edge of that comfort zone, if not a little bit past it. To give you an example, for me personally, with climbing, I'm terrified of heights. Anyone who knows me, I'm not a fan of heights. I'm fine in planes. Planes are fine. Escalators are okay. Glass elevators, not my fan. Not unless I'm further back. I'm not a fan of glass elevators. I went to the CN Tower. They had that glass bottom thing. That was not for me. not going to happen. It just doesn't feel safe. Climbing for me, when I first started climbing, rock climbing, it was like I would get to a point and I'm like, okay, I'm high enough. And I'm literally just like 5 feet off the ground. But I'm like, okay, I'm okay. I'm high enough right now. And like I kind of freeze mentally and I'm like, I gotta get past this. I gotta push myself. It wasn't until I pushed myself really hard that I actually started getting to the top of these things and actually got there. I actually reached the top on a bunch of these things. And now that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a regular thing, but it happens often enough because I want to keep pushing myself. I want to keep doing harder and harder things to get better and to raise my personal bar. And so I wouldn't even look at it as personal inflation compared to anyone else, right? I would never say to judge yourself by anyone else's rubric or anyone else's, standards. Judge it by your own standards. If you're not improving yourself for the sake of improving yourself, if you're competing against yourself from last year and you're exactly the same as what you were last year, what does that say? It's safer to stay in your comfort zone. Absolutely. It's safe to stay in the same spot, but it's also safe to lock yourself in a bunker. It's safe to do a lot of different things that you don't want to do that ultimately are not going to contribute to your growth or your happiness. Happy and safe are two different things, right? You can be safe and be completely unhappy and be really frustrated and annoyed and just like, I want more out of life. It's also safe to get a $30,000 a year job and just work that job and be, and nothing wrong with that for folks who do that, right? But if that's all you're ever planning on doing, that is technically safe, right? Now it's safe until it's not, because $30,000 a year in today's economy, depending if you live in a major city, any major city in this country, that's not really going to do much for you. Now, if you're out there and kind of out in the less urban areas and like more suburban or even rural areas, it might be really good. But look at yourself, not even just from a financial point of view, but in terms of personal inflation. Be careful of personal inflation. Be careful of getting caught in that trap, that safety trap of feeling, oh, I'm good, I'm fine right now, I've achieved what I want to achieve. If you're not growing, you're declining. And that's just the way it is, especially in business, especially in the professional world, because you can achieve all the accolades you want, but give people enough time, they'll catch up. And you don't want that to happen because you don't want to lose your edge. You don't want to be the one who was great and burned out years ago and ends up being forgotten. You want to be the person who's on the cutting edge as much as possible, as much as you can be for yourself, so you can keep growing. You can keep growing that business. You can keep building that business to the point where it gives you the life you want to give for yourself and your family, and you can actually succeed in terms of what you define success as. And again, maybe you define success as having the cabin in the woods and just enjoying yourself and being unplugged from the world. That's absolutely fine. But even in that world, there's a bar. Even in that world, there's ways to maximize your abilities and to grow and grow and grow. You can get better at building campfires. You can get better at hunting. You can get better at fishing. You can get better at survival. You can always get better is what I'm saying. So for whatever's meaningful to you, find ways and means to get better, to improve yourself, and don't succumb to personal inflation. So Josh, thanks for tuning in, man. I appreciate it for the comment today. For anyone who watched the video and enjoyed it, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit that share button, let anyone know who wants to see this video, who might be helpful for. Please share it with them. And let me know what you guys want to see more of. Let me see what I want to see less of as well. I'd love to share some content that's really meaningful for you guys in the future. So let me know. All right. Take care, stay safe, and have a great week, everybody.